All right. Welcome back to another episode of Burglar Report Bible Study with Bible Dave. I, of course, have my trusty New Living Translation. And we're getting back into Genesis. I think today we're going to cover chapter 4 and 5, which is mostly about Cain and Abel and Adam's descendants. But there's something that struck me as odd in our last reading, and I had a long pause looking at it. And I wanted to touch base on it again. I more or less glossed over it because my main focus was, I guess, the story of creation, right? And some of the language in regards to man and woman and all that jazz. You can go back and watch it. But Adam and Eve. Do we all come from Adam and Eve as we're told in the mainstream narrative? Find out. Tune in for more. I believe there's some passages in there that might say otherwise. So, let's get into it. Oh, jeez. I'm silly. Okay, so let's just start off with what struck me as odd. In chapter 1, so we'll go back to chapter 1. Man was created on the 6th day. And then God rested on the 7th day. And that's clearly stated in chapter 1. And restated at the beginning of chapter 2. And then it goes into the man and woman in Eden, where God then creates Adam from dust, and Adam's hanging out for a while, and then he creates woman from Adam's rib. Right, we all know the story. What struck me as odd is, why was that told twice? I remember reading that and looking at it, because I haven't read Genesis in a long time, to be honest, and because we all know the story, we think we know the story. And so why would those passages be there twice? Well, maybe I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe, it just goes into more detail on the creation of man. But then there was no passage afterwards talking about God resting. So I think this is the second part to the story of creation, which also has to do with Cain and Abel, we'll get to in a moment. So there's certain things that I've studied in the past that stick out to me and that I can remember offhand, that I kind of forgot. Oh, I got a notification. Turn that off there, tell you what. So, God created man, and then creates the Garden of Eden, and then man again. I think that more or less lines up with some evolutionary ideas. I think creationism and evolution is one and the same, just different timelines, different language. And obviously, if we were some kind of hunter-gatherer from God's initial creation, and then the Garden of Eden goes into sowing seeds and farming, agricultural ideas. So that could be our modern civilization, perhaps. Perhaps. But from my take on it, the story of Adam and Eve is a story of a particular bloodline that leads to Jesus, our Lord and Savior. And the rest of human creation is already there. So, I, of course, do not want to detract or add to the word, but these are just clear passages that are in here that sound good in my mind. To say that we all came from Adam and Eve has always been of a stretch, and it turns away a lot of people. So that never stuck well with me. But if it clearly says in one chapter this was done, and the next chapter this was done, and it doesn't go into telling that this is a detail of this, then for me that's just a timeline. So this was done first, this was done second, and here we are continuing on. But if that's too much for you to comprehend, perhaps this isn't the channel for you. I don't want anybody weakened faith to be lost by what I talk about. I like to pontificate, if you will. Add this information into my own understanding, my own relationship with God. So, here we go. Chapter 4, Cain and Abel. Now, Adam had sexual relations with his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant. On a side note, it's because of just wife thing. What I'm about to say is not in the scriptures here. I don't know what scripture or what text this comes from, but that's kind of the backstory of the Lilith character in mythology. That perhaps Adam had a wife prior to Eve that was created for him specifically, and it was maybe some kind of other man evolution or some kind of demonic fallen entity kind of thing. Just popped in my head. I read a lot of ancient, esoteric, all of that. Anyways, continuing on. And Eve, she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help, I have produced a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd while Cain cultivated the ground. And when it was time for harvest, Cain presented some of the crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best of his firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. So it's part of that story is giving back to God, your tithe. Obviously Abel brought his best, and it says Cain brought some of his crops. So wasn't bringing. In modern day kind of thinking, you have to be grateful. You have to be mindful. You have to understand that there is a purpose to your life, and part of it is accepting what you have and being grateful, and then giving back what you can with your energy. Kind of a karma thing, perhaps. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master." Kind of what I said-ish. Easy to follow. One day, Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother, Abel, and killed him. Jealousy is it's a real thing. Afterwards, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel?" "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's keeper?" It says guardian. "Am I my brother's guardian?" But the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will your ground yield crops." Good. Let's start that over. "No longer will the ground yield good crops for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth." So Cain kills his brother out of jealousy and is cursed. So much that we do can curse us when we're selfish. Hey, didn't we have a recent overturn in the Supreme Court? A lot of selfish acts no longer constitutional? let's move on. Cain replied to the Lord, "My punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from the land and from your presence, and you have made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me." Anyone who finds me. Anyone who finds me will kill me. If Adam and Eve were the only two people here, and Cain and Abel were the only other two people here, who are these anyone who finds me will kill me persons? Which is why I go back to man was already on earth and was created in chapter 1 on the 6th day. Chapter 2, Adam and Eve. Chapter 4, we're at Cain and Abel. Okay, this is a bloodline, from my understanding, and he's getting thrown out into the rest of the world. Excuse me, my goodness. And now he has to deal with other people, and he has got a curse on him for his evil deeds. But verse 15, the Lord replied, "No, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So he's kicked out of the land, or he's kicked out. Well, they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, but so they were out there. I'm assuming the surrounding area. I don't necessarily know the historical context. I mean, it's, you have the rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, I'm familiar with from Mesopotamia. In modern day Iraq, I guess. So I don't know where the land of Nod would be. I don't know if there's any subtext here. It's what 16, chapter 4. Oh, Nod means wandering. Okay. Oh, he's a wanderer. Okay. There you go. So Cain gets kicked out. Has to go hang out with the rest of the people. So the descendants of Cain. Cain had sexual relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. So right away it jumps to Cain got married, met somebody, had a kid with who, if there were no other children there, right? See my point. Enoch had a son named Irad. Irad became the father of Mehujal. Mehujal became the father of Methuselah. Methuselah became the father of Lamech. So, I'm terrible with names. Lamech married 2 women. The first named Ada, the second was Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the first of those who raised livestock and lived in tents. His brother's name was, so we have a Jabal and a Jubal, the first of all who play the harp and flute. Lamech's other wife, Zillah, gave birth to a son named Tubal-Cain. He became an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain had a sister named Naamah. One day Lamech said to his wives, "Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Listen to me, you wives of Lamech. I have killed the man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. If someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 70 times. Or 77 times. Okay, so you have the story, or Cain's descendants, and you have this one that's, great at raising livestock. This other one is great at making tools. This other one's great at making music. So, this is kind of a story of civilization coming to be, in my mind. One branch of it. Just as I thought maybe Adam and Eve is a story of modern day agriculture. I want to say evolution, but also there's been a divine intervention in our evolution, which is why I think creationism, evolution, same thing. All this knowledge from living off the land, being hunter-gatherer, just kind of what animals do, to something. This is far more profound. Making tools to this degree, or musical instruments, and even just understanding how to cultivate. It's quite the science. Farmers are very hard workers. They're not dumb by any means. They get a lot of Midwestern folk might get a bad rap for, I don't know, who they vote for, and they've all of a sudden they're supposed to be stupid. No, not even close. So continue on, verse 25. The birth of Seth. Adam had sexual relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to another son. She named him Seth, for she said, "God has granted me another son in place of Abel, who Cain killed." When Seth grew up, he had a son and named him Enosh. At that time, people first began to worship the Lord by name. So, okay. Not the sniffles, apparently. Alright, so chapter 4, the descendants of Adam. This is the written count of the descendants of Adam. There'll be a lot of names here. When God created human beings, he made them to be like himself. Which is true. We are godlike in our creation ability, but we are not God. I know modern day New Age teachings will say that we are God. No. We have the ability. Our ability to create, our ability to even speak, and things coming to fruition, our ability to manifest our own realities, to terraform the world around us, we definitely have something that no other creation on this planet has. I mean, if life came from the oceans and you have these whales and dolphins that are far larger and probably have bigger brains, just kind of just fizzled out. They didn't really do much. And yet here we are. Anyways. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him, in his very image. He named his son Seth. After the birth of Seth, Adam lived another 800 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Adam lived 930 years, and then he died. It's quite a long time. When Seth was 105 years old, he became the father of Enosh. After the birth of Enosh, Seth lived another 807 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Seth lived for 912 years, and then he died. When Enosh was 90 years old, he became the father of Kenan. After the birth of Kenan, Enosh lived another 15 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Enosh lived 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan was 7 years old, he became the father of Mahalalel. After the birth of Mahalalel, Kenan lived another 840 years. He had other sons and daughters. Kenan lived 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel was 65 years old, he became the father of Jared. After the birth of Jared, Mahalalel lived another 830 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Mahalalel lived 895 years, and then he died. That is a tricky name. When Jared was 162 years old, he became the father of Enoch. After the birth of Enoch, Jared lived another 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Jared lived 962 years, and then he died. So I think that's the longest so far. When Enoch was 65 years old, he became the father of Methuselah. After the birth of Methuselah, Enoch lived in close fellowship with God for another 300 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Enoch lived 365 years, walking in close fellowship with God. Then one day he disappeared because God took him. That's a very unique story with Enoch. And I believe the book of Enoch was taken out of the modern Bible. There are many books that have been taken out of the modern Bible. I believe Revelations was put in and taken out a number of times based on the times that the church or the government, kings and queens wanted to control the peasants. So there's some manipulation going on in there, but we're continuing on. When Methuselah was 187 years old, he became the father of Lamech. After Lamech, Methuselah lived another 782 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Methuselah lived 969 years, and then he died. My goodness. These are some long-lived fellows. Yeah, that's the longest one, I believe. When Lamech was 182 years old, he became the father of his son. Lamech named his son Noah, for he said, "May he bring us relief from our work in the painful labor of farming this ground that the Lord has cursed." After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived another 595 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Lamech lived 777 years, and then he died. By the time Noah was 500 years old, he was the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That's the end of chapter 5, but we're going to stop there. So all all these fellows live quite lengthy lives. And I don't know why or how. But there is a notion that the radiation from the sun does cause our DNA to deteriorate. So maybe perhaps there was lifespans far greater than we have now. And because of, thousands of years, whatever, all this time, I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. Maybe our DNA has deteriorated to a point to where we don't live quite as long. Quite possible. But that's a huge jump from, or what our long lives now are 120. And yet some of these people didn't even have children until 120. 130 Adam was. That's after, his second set of sons. Children. That's crazy. So, I think there could be some possibilities with that. People will say, oh, no, we're living longer now than we're really not. We have, they would say, oh, no, people didn't live past 35 back in those days. Well, no, that was an average. And that had to do with childbirth, women being young in their teens, giving birth to children, and infant mortality because they didn't have modern day medical, advances to where they could see what was wrong with the baby beforehand. So that brings the average way down when you have, people living to be 100 or, whatever, that are more or less healthy or have a proper amount of nutrition, because the nutrition was huge. And then you have all these poor children and young women dying. The average just comes down to 35. But the case was people were still living to be in the 100, over 100 years ago, 200 years ago, whatever the case is. But because of, infection and women bleeding and not having the proper medical treatment and, just disease overall from malnutrition oftentimes, that number was brought way down. And so now they want to tell us that we're living longer now. It's not the case. Especially now, actually the past, I want to say 5 years, our number is going back down because of, or at least in the United States, because of the food we're eating. The GMOs and stuff is destroying our DNA and just causing so many problems. But we'll conclude with that. Genesis, that was chapter 4 and 5. Interesting story creation is, and a lot of interesting factors that people just kind of disregard. Because, you get tunnel vision, or you're thinking, because I am this person, I must believe this way, when myself am very skeptical and I like to take everything into account. I have no doubt that we have a creator. No doubt that, the God in the Bible is the truth. I just like other information to implement into my relationship with God. And I conclude with that. That's our Wednesday Bible study. I'll be back on Sunday with another. Maybe Saturday with another video. We shall see. This guy. Alright.